My name is Carina Gardner, and I'm what you would call a practical designer. If you're ready to create a life that you love, become an incredible force for good, and generate income while pursuing your dreams, this is the podcast for you. Welcome to Make and Design. Hi, designers. You guys, I am so excited because today we are with Steve Hamoen, and he is the podcast host of the Money Mindset Mentoring Podcast. I think you guys are going to love today's episode. We did an episode over on his podcast talking a little bit about the new university, but he brings so much expertise to the table. And more than anything, he's actually a fantastic podcaster, which is really, really actually hard to find. I've been on a lot of podcasts the last little bit, and we did kind of like an initial chat together, make sure it was a great fit. And then he sent me over questions so I could review what he was good. I'm like, I don't do any of that. So he was probably disappointed on his end for coming onto my podcast, but it was really fantastic. So welcome, Steve.
Thank you so much for having me. And it was a wonderful podcast talking about the stuff that you're doing with the university program and building that out. I'm super excited to see the outcomes on that.
Thanks. I'm excited as well. Okay, so your expertise, this is so fascinating. You talked about real estate, martial arts. Tell me, will you give us some breadth of field of why you love talking about business and what things do you have your fingers in?
Yeah, so I love challenges, I guess, is probably the first thing. I think there's a guy by the name of Les Brown. He talks about this. He says, if you do things that are hard, your life is going to be easy. And if you do things that are easy, your life is going to be hard. And I think that's a principle to live by. And doing things that are hard doesn't mean doing things that are stupid. It means doing things that are difficult, doing things that other people wouldn't necessarily do. And so for me, I've used that sort of as a principle when looking at and reviewing at the things that I want to do, and then seeing, do they align with my core values? Do they align with the vision of what I want my future to be? And understanding that it's okay to pivot in life. And I think a lot of people get into a rut and they think about what they're doing is the only thing that they can do. And what they do becomes their identity. And I think if you can separate what you do from the identity of who you are, a lot of opportunities start to present themselves.
Yeah, very, very interesting. I think I see this in business as well because this has happened recently. I have a few CEO girlfriends who've sold their businesses and then they're at loose ends. They don't know who they are. And I'm like, wait, you were this confident, amazing CEO. And suddenly you're you can't make a decision and can't. I'm like, what is going on? What do you see in the space when people?
I think that happens in a lot of things where people were maybe even a police officer or they were a nurse or a paramedic and they're in their space and their identity, especially in those where it's considered the professional. What are you? I'm a police officer. It's not I'm Bob or I'm Sally. I'm a police officer. And a lot of people say, what do you do? And I'd say I'm an entrepreneur. And they're like, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I grow businesses. Well, what businesses? Well, it doesn't matter what the business is. The business could be today potatoes and tomorrow it could be computers. But the thing is, the principles of the businesses, those are the things that I think are more intrinsic. What do? I develop an idea. What do? I develop an offer. What do? I develop people. What do? I scale organizations, focus on revenue, focus on profit, focus on outcomes, like our conversation that we had, focus on outcomes. And I think looking at it from that perspective, at the principle level, the mechanics of the business, it's irrelevant. I think you can find things, everybody thinks that their business or what they do is so unique, but the problems that you have in one industry or one business is almost identical, just with the different, different packaging, talking about your background, a different packaging than the other one.
Yeah. Isn't that fascinating? So tell me what you have your fingers in at this moment. What are you loving doing?
We have a mortgage brokerage and I love my mortgage brokerage, Real Approved. It's a Canadian mortgage brokerage. I've got such amazing people in the brokerage. They're like family to me. And just every moment that I can spend time with them, it just brings me joy. We've got amazing clients and a really good network of people that refer business to us. And what I also love about that business is we have systems and models. And those systems and models really focus on the people who are going to be in those systems and models. In other words, we use a process called DISC. And DISC allows us to do an index on the personalities and the people in the business. So really what you're doing is you're putting the right people in the right positions doing the thing that they love. Because if you could draw a Venn diagram of saying this is what I love doing, And then over here is, this is what I'm good at. And over here, you could say, this is what I get paid the most for doing it. And if you could look where all those three come together concentrically in the middle, that's what you want people to be doing. And so if somebody, loves doing administration and they love, finding out the details of how do they fix a deal or put the riddles of a deal together, but they really don't like selling, we'll get them to do what they love. So the person who loves selling, who hates paperwork, can do what they love to doing. And then the whole is always greater than the sum of the parts. So
Yeah.
the mortgage business runs that way. And pretty much every of the other business does the same thing too.
Yeah, pretty amazing. So I'm curious in the DISC system. I don't know if it works with personalities or just like a mix. Is there someone that's always hard to find that you like are always looking for? Or maybe not even always looking for, but is there like a personality
I
in
think
your
there's
business?
always looking 100%. I think, if you're an entrepreneur, not a solopreneur, if you're a solopreneur, you won't understand this. And there's nothing wrong with being a solopreneur. It's a different, direction to go in your business. But if you're running a business, that means you're an entrepreneur. And when you're an entrepreneur, you have a vision. And in order to build a big vision, you need more people to fill into your business to support your big vision. And so you always need to be looking for people, because as your vision keeps on growing, so does your desire to then bring in more people, because it's just a self-propagating engine. And so you're always recruiting, you're always looking for people. And your business is going to have different needs at different times. So my personal belief is always build a bench in your organization. Always know who that next person is, so that they're there when you need them. It's not that I have the need and now I'm going to go look for somebody. It's that I have the people and I'm ready to now bring them in. And it's a better model, because you're not scrambling to find people.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, so good. So, I would love to kind of like take a little bit of a fork in the road because I'm super curious about why you started a podcast.
That's a great question. So there was a individual, his name is Andre Chin. He runs a real estate brokerage at Keller Williams Innovations. And he had a podcast, and I just was listening to it, and I thought it was a great podcast. And I started really getting into the podcast. I don't know if it's because Joe Rogan's bald and I'm bald, and we had a bald identity connection, where he loves martial arts. I love martial arts, so that was the connection. But I was seeing what Andre was doing with his podcast, and the connections he was making, and I thought that was extremely interesting. So I started getting into the podcast space, and I just started interviewing people. Then I started realizing how much impact it can make in your business. Like it for me, it is, from a lead magnet standpoint, podcasting is like my number one, number two, and number one lead source for my businesses, all of them.
So fascinating. Can I ask how many businesses you have right now?
So we've got the real estate business, we've got the mortgage business, we have a software business that we're partnered with in property management. We have a software business that we're partnered with in actually podcasting services. So it hosts all the podcasts and all that jazz, and really cool AI driven product. And so those are the businesses we have running at this time.
That's
Maybe when
awesome.
you play this, I'll grab another one.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, the only way to run that many businesses is you have really good people in place and really good
Mhm.
systems in place
Yep.
to run such a thing.
Yep. No, for sure. And some of them I'm not running, I'm doing a joint venture with, or I'm doing a partnership with. But the thing is when you're doing that, you definitely have to run in systems and models. No question about it. And because if you don't, it's just, it's running on personality, and personality some days will show up in a way that's positive, and other days will show up in a way that is the opposite of that.
Yeah, incredible. So, so good. Okay, so you started the podcast. It's been
Mhm.
pretty successful. I was very fascinated by your process for having people onto your podcast. Tell me a little bit about, first of all, how long have you been running it? What kinds of things you guys like to talk about on your podcast so that people can get a sense of
Mm.
really like what you guys are chatting about?
Yeah. So our podcast started really back in September. So it hasn't been running for that long. We talk about money, health, family, and wealth. And so we talk a lot about different business ideas and concepts. And that's why yours is very great, because it really hits a couple of those different pillars. But what I'm most proud about the podcast is that it generates revenue. And I think a lot of people, when they start a podcast, they don't know why they've started. They're just like, I should start a podcast, and they start it. And they don't put KPIs, key performance indicators, in play to say, what's the barometer of success? And to me, there's a book. Have you had the book called The Five Love Languages?
Yes.
Yeah. So there was a missing chapter at the end that actually fell off. And I didn't know if you knew about this. And
No.
and and so that's the chapter that's all about my love language. and my love language is revenue. And so it was missing that chapter. And so I was like, oh, it's great. So I used that as my
Isn't that
mechanism.
gifts? Isn't that
Gifts.
gifts?
I don't know.
Maybe.
Actually, gifts, I'm probably the worst at gifts. It's not that I don't like giving them. I don't know if I'm
Yeah,
not
but you
thoughtful,
like you
but
like getting revenue, right? So maybe your love language is getting gifts, which would be in the form of revenue.
yeah, the reason why I love revenue is because I'm a math head and it's very easy to measure. And I love measured deliverables. And so because I can point at and say that it's an easy measurable and it has a very finite way to measure success, that's why I love it. And I also love it because it's impactful. Like when I went to the bank the other day and I was trying to pay my mortgage, I went to go pay with likes and subscribes, and for some reason they never accepted them. And I'm like, haven't you guys got the memo? Like these things are really cool. All the Instagram people who teach these courses tell us about likes and subscribes. Why didn't you guys accept them here?
That is
And
crazy. My
I
bank won't
know,
take
right?
those either.
So I have to
Nothing.
focus on revenue because apparently they don't do that. They never got the memo. So focusing on revenue means that I can have more impact. And you see, the thing is, it's not that I'm this greedy dude who just thinks about money, but it's that money in itself is meaningless. Money is the reason why money is important is because money is the currency of impact. And so the more that you have of the currency of impact, the more impact you can have in the world. Like if I want to go out and build a school, if I want to go out and change a neighborhood, if I want to just do something simple as take my whole family on a vacation and pay for everything, I can't do that if I don't have money. I can't have impact. There's a guy who's got a podcast called Go Big to Give Big, or no, go big to give big. And I really firmly believe in that. I think that's an idea is that if you want to make big change in this world, you have to do big things. And revenue is certainly the fuel for that.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I don't know if I believed that 100% 5 years ago. I liked revenue. I thought it was a great thing. But as a designer, a lot of what I wanted, and those of you listening, you know this, you want to make money, but you're also like, oh, fulfillment. I can tell you that those two things actually can go together very, very nicely. I think we see that with artists of old. You guys have heard me talk about Picasso. The only reason he was able to create 50,000 works during his lifetime was because he was creating revenue from those artworks. And so there is a lot to be said about that, especially right now, because I'm in the midst of building this university situation. It would be absolutely impossible if we didn't have the financing needed from our other businesses.
Absolutely. When you look at the things that drive somebody to do something, right? I mean, the first easy win is obviously motivation. You
Mhm.
watch that one video, you listen to that one speaker, they've got the twinkly eyes, and you're like, oh man, that so speaks to my soul. And you're like, or you're at that one event, and you're like jumping up and down, going, yeah, I love what we're talking about. And then you get home and you're like, okay, you go to bed and you get up the next morning, you're like, okay, I'm being definitely put it in my calendar and it's in my calendar, but then something else goes over it and then it sort of fades away and then motivation doesn't happen. The next thing that hopefully if you actually get motivation gets you into action, which we talked about on our interview, we talk about how important getting into action is. Action allows you to get into the state of discipline because discipline shows up when motivation doesn't. So if you get in the state of discipline, you're actually going to start producing and getting things going, and you get in the habit of doing things. And to be honest, if it becomes enough of a habit, it actually becomes part of your identity. When it becomes part of your identity, you're going to do it more and more. But the disconnect between it being part of discipline and part of your identity is willpower. And willpower is the thing that's going to underpin everything. And if you don't have the willpower that's going to get you from point A to point B, it's going to fade. And things that kill you on willpower are things like, are you in the environment for success? Like, look, if your house has got Cheetos and chip bags all over the house and you're doing a diet and you're like, the Cheetos are right there. There's nothing good healthy. You're going to grab the bag. It doesn't matter like what course you've taken and, whose program you signed up for. The environment's going to cause that problem. And the other thing is measured success. And that's why I love revenue, because revenue fuels willpower. Willpower then fuels your discipline. And that then gives you the motivation and that creates this cycle of success.
Yeah, so incredibly good, you guys. Like, honestly, he just threw at you like 100 gold nuggets. So you might want to re-listen to that, that little piece right there. Seriously good. Especially love where you're talking about motivation versus self-discipline. I think that's the hardest thing for all of us, if I'm being honest, right? We go to conferences, we go to things to keep ourselves motivated, but it's like really at the end of the day, it's the self-discipline, the doing the hard things every day, because motivation is unsustainable.
Absolutely. And the thing is, once you get comfortable with doing hard things, this is why I love martial arts. I love Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There's a coach. His name's John Danaher. He coached George St. Pierre, who's one of the greatest of all times in the UFC. He coaches Gordon Ryan, legend in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and so on and so on and so on. And what he says about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I think business does the same thing, what he says about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is that it teaches you how to make decisions under stress.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on a podcast the other day and I was talking with this lady. It was the Aloha podcast or whatever. I forget the name. And lovely, amazing woman and just awesome topics that we were talking about. And one thing we talked about kids. And when people talk about kids is the idea of, the helicopter parent, the protective parent, the person who doesn't let their kids see stress or see any sort of like the idea that like, oh my gosh, they're going to get offended. My thing is offend your kids on a frequent basis, put your kids in chaos in a frequent basis, put them under stress as much as possible. And I'm not talking like unbridled, like in traffic and make them run in traffic, but put them in a situation of stress, because if they can get comfortable in making decisions under stress, when real stress starts to showing up, so you create manufactured stress, that's what martial arts really does. It's manufactured stress that when they become in real world situations, they can actually succeed. And that's why I love your course, what you're doing with the university one, because you're creating manufactured stress. You're saying, you got to create a business. You got to do this. You got to produce success, not just theoretically say, yeah, there's this business thing. You're actually putting the manufactured stress. And that's why I love
Yeah. We're definitely mean that way. We're like the mean mom who loves you so much
it.
that we are going to make you do X, Y, and Z. Wow. Maybe I'll have my kids listen to that and maybe they'll feel a little bit better about the amount of stress I give them. That's pretty hilarious. But so incredibly true, right? Just
Mm,
really, really true. Well, I'd love to wrap this up with talking a little bit more about your podcast. Where can people
mm,
find you if they're interested in hearing more about what you have to talk about? Where should they go?
mm. Well, first of all, I want to talk why they would want to reach out is for us. My whole thing is if your podcast is about true crimes or your podcast is about some journey of the heart that maybe doesn't have a revenue stream tied to it, we're not probably the organization for you. But if you're somebody who has a business, you're somebody who has an objective that you're trying to grow and scale in revenue, you have the same love language as I do for your business, and you're trying to figure out how do I make money podcasting. Our podcast is set to make millions of dollars this year through podcasting. And we show people how to do that in under 100 episodes and how to get their business into real good traction, that they're making money for their business through podcasting. If that's what you're looking to do, then connect with us, check us out on either YouTube or hit me up on Instagram or whichever. Just look up my name. I'm the only one in the world with the name. So
You better spell the last name for them so they can.
Hamoen and Steve with a V. And
Yeah.
I'm pretty
Yeah.
much the only one you'll find there.
Yeah. Hamoon. Because like I had to have him say it for me because I was like, I am not 100% sure if I know how to say the second part of this,
Can I be
but
honest? I don't even know how to pronounce it either.
Oh, Steve, thanks so much for being on today. You guys go check him out. We'll make sure and put that information in the show notes for you as well. I think you'll really enjoy. If you have a podcast right now, or you're thinking about doing a podcast, I think this is a really good way to start out. You guys know I talk about distribution methods and
Mhm.
understanding those, and that's always the way you should be walking into a business. Sometimes I see a lot of people start a podcast and it's just for the fun of it. It's
That's
not a
right.
good reason to start a podcast.
No, I think for
It's
me,
a lot of
it's
time.
work at the principles of revenue. If you're looking at that revenue is important for your business and going out and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in Facebook ads, it scares you and you want to find another alternative to grow your business. And through podcasting, that's definitely something to consider.
I love it. Thank you so much, Steve. Guys, everybody have a fantastic day, and we will see you soon. Did you know you have access to more free design content, die cut files, and sewing patterns? Join our exclusive VIP group for free by going to designsweetcourses.com/free.